The presenting sponsor of Pod Save America is Blue
It's
Apron.
Keurig.
The number one fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. Blue Apron's mission is to make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone. They achieve this by supporting a more sustainable food system, setting the highest standards for ingredients, and building a community of home chefs.
Throw it out the window, John.
If you don't throw your Blue Apron out the window, the featured upcoming meals include crispy wild Alaskan pollock and garlic mashed potatoes with roasted broccoli and tartar sauce. Also, cheesy broccoli baked pasta with crispy thyme breadcrumbs.
Cool.
Thyme? How do you say that?
It's thyme.
Cheesy
Rosemary
broccoli
and
baked
thyme.
pasta with crispy thyme breadcrumbs. I said it right the first time.
Nailed it.
Choose from a variety of new recipes each week, or let Blue Apron's culinary team surprise you. Recipes are not repeated within a year, so you'll never get bored. Blue Apron's freshness guarantee promises that every ingredient in your delivery arrives ready to cook, or they'll make it right. Check out this week's menu and get $30 off your first order with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/crooked. You'll love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so don't wait. That's blueapron.com/crooked. Blue Apron is a better way to
I wonder when Republicans will figure out who's better, a pedophile or a Democrat.
cook. Welcome to Pod Save America. I'm Jon Favreau.
I'm Jon Lovett.
I'm Tommy Vietor.
Tommy was taking a
Big
big
swig
drink
of
there.
coffee. It's that kind of day.
Today in the pod, we'll be talking to the former anchor of the CBS Evening News, Dan Rather.
He's cool.
And later, we'll be talking to the host of Pod Save the People, DeRay McKesson. Love it? How was the Beacon?
The Beacon was awesome. It was a great show. The first of the two Beacon shows is out now. We had Jon Favreau come by, and then a panel of Katie Tur, Alex Wagner, Michelle Wolf, one of my favorite shows.
Awesome show.
The crowd in New York was awesome.
I listened at the gym and I giggled uncomfortably with lots of people around me.
They were so smart. Michelle, so funny. I love an all-women panel because they don't interrupt each other. But it was a great show. And then this week we have Van Jones, Chris Kelly of SNL, and comedian Cristela Alonso.
Cool.
And then our second Beacon show is going to come out as our Thanksgiving episode.
Awesome.
Cool. Tell me who's on Pod Save the World on Friday, and tell us about the new schedule, the new change.
Got a lot going on in my world, John. Thanks for asking. Pod Save the World is moving to Fridays. I always thought of it as more of a weekend show. You chillax with your friends. You listen to some Pod Save the World.
Chillax.
It also gives me a lot more time to record during the week and keep it topical.
I feel like we found the buried lead of the movement.
This week, right now, you can listen to an episode with an Asia expert named Danny Russell, who helps you understand why Trump took a 5-nation, 13-day swing through Asia, how it's going, what successes, failures are, etc. Later this week, I'm going to record an interview about what the hell's going on in Saudi Arabia and Lebanon, because it's freaking a lot of people out. And then this Wednesday, my crooked conversation with Jane Mayer, the author of the book Dark Money, which I've mentioned 600,000 times, is out. And if you please listen to the interview. You don't have to do it this week. You don't have to listen to it on Wednesday, but listen to it sometime, because the problem of money in politics is so important, and you need to hear it.
Guys, subscribe to Crooked Conversations. Some of the best conversations are happening there. Dan Pfeiffer and Mark Leibovich about the NFL. We got Tommy and Jane Mayer.
I cannot
go subscribe, guys.
wait to find out what
they're like
first
20,
down
30-minute
is.
conversations.
I'm going to find out what those chains are for. I'm going to find out about all different kinds
Who are
of
those
pads.
stripey guys? Yeah.
Chains are for.
What do they say? We're moving
also,
the chains.
We
Is that what
yeah,
they
that's
said?
what they say. Love it. New pod that we announced last week. Majority 54 with Jason Kandor. Already at the top of it. Number one.
So, you know what? Number one, it defeated a true crime podcast, which
I
is
know,
like
I heard
the David versus
It's
Goliath
so funny
situation.
because I listened to Love It or Leave It on Sunday, and I heard you yelling about the true crime podcasts, and I know you threw in Jason as a cover for complaining about Love It or Leave It not making it to number one.
Well, that was because of
that was
S-Town.
deft.
That
But
was
now-
because of S-Town.
But now Jason did it. Jason got to number one.
Yeah, and good for Jason. But all I'm saying is, I mean, I can't go back in time, but man, launching at the same time as S-Town, we'll never
tough.
get to. It was tough.
So that will be out this Friday, November 17th, will be the first episode of Majority 54. Go subscribe right now. It's going to be great. All right. Let's talk about the news.
Okay.
So the big debate within the Democratic Party right now is, who will lead the party out of the wilderness? How far left should we move? What's our message? How do we
How
beat
sad
Trump?
did Donna Brazil's book make us?
Yeah, how sad did Donna Brazil's book? So that's what's going on in the Democratic Party. The big debate within the Republican Party right now is, should we support an alleged child molester for Senate in order to prevent a Democrat from winning the seat? That's the big debate. On Thursday, the Washington Post reported that Alabama Senate candidate Roy Moore pursued teenage girls when he was in his 30s, including an incident where he initiated sexual contact with a 14-year-old. That woman a Republican who voted for Donald Trump went on the record with the allegation. Again, she is a Republican who voted for Donald Trump. Went on the record with the allegation, and the entire Post story was based on interviews with more than 30 other people,
That's a lot of people,
who knew
John.
Moore at the time. Moore denied the incident with the 14-year-old, but did not deny that he used to date teenage girls while in his 30s. Some news today. This morning, another accuser is alleging that Moore assaulted her when she was a minor. And yet, despite all this, we have only a handful of Republicans have called on Moore to drop out of the race. McCain, Romney, Kasich, Larry Hogan, governor of Maryland, and now today, Mitch McConnell has called him to drop out. A couple of others here and there withdrew their endorsement. The largest chunk of Senate Republicans and the White House have all done the if true, he should step aside. And then we've got the other crew, which is most Alabama Republican officials and the entire Trump media are defending Moore and using the opportunity to attack the media, the Democrats, and of course the woman who came forward. Let's start with the if true crowd. What kind of additional hard evidence do you think these folks are looking for?
Could we start with the fact that there didn't need to be allegations that Roy Moore sexually molested a 14-year-old to know that he was not qualified for this job? Let's just
That's
start
a good
there.
start. That's
and
a
also,
good start.
I would like the media to stop dancing around what this is. This is child molestation, if it's true. It's not sexual misconduct. It's not all the euphemism they're peddling. It's child molestation. And this is a guy who, before these allegations were even revealed, said that a Muslim couldn't be elected to public office, and said like all manner of divisive, disgusting things.
Well, he spent his career vilifying people for consensual adult relationships.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is no surprise that he has sort of covered up whatever creepy things he's done in his past with this, disgusting in-your-face, overt theocracy that he's peddled from his various positions of power. I mean, he is manifestly unfit for the job, and there's no if true needed on that statement.
Yeah, there's no small irony in the fact that Roy Moore, who's now asking, innocent until proven guilty, has spent his entire career flouting the law, saying that when a Supreme Court makes a decision, it doesn't count.
Yeah.
Believing that homosexuality should be illegal, believing that Keith Ellison, because he's Muslim, shouldn't serve in the United States Congress. Now he wants the benefit of the doubt. But let's talk about how the Republican Party has reacted here. So now you've got McConnell and a couple of them saying he should step aside. Let's have a write-in candidate, which they can do. Of course, having a write-in candidate, Moore cannot get off the ballot unless he drops out. It doesn't look like he's dropping out anytime soon. If you had a write-in candidate, in all likelihood, Doug Jones, the Democrat, would win the Senate seat. Mm-hmm. There are a number of Republicans who have decided that it is worse for a Democrat to win a Senate seat than to elect someone who has been accused of sexual molestation of a minor and an allegation that's backed up by 30 sources.
Right, and you don't have to view McConnell's actions here as some sort of like defense of moral probity, because he's looking at this and thinking, actually, having Roy Moore win would be as damaging as it gets, right? There's people making the calculus that having Roy Moore is better than having Democrat, and there's people making the calculus that having Roy Moore would be worse than a Democrat, but not enough people simply saying, well, a few people willing to say this is just morally reprehensible.
Exactly.
Politics be damned.
That's the problem with this, is like basically what the margins of the debate you described are political calculations.
Yeah.
No one is thinking, is it acceptable to allow a man in this august body, this deliberative body that we all revere, who allegedly molested a 14-year-old girl and plied a bunch of other 17 and 8-year-old girls with alcohol when he was in his 30s. And, his colleague said, we all thought it was weird that he would hang out at the mall and high school football games and shit all the time. Like, there's so much evidence that this guy is a creep.
That girl was at a custody hearing.
Unbelievable.
Like, he was a member of the state picking up a little girl and grooming her when his mother was there for divorce court.
Now, let's move on to the defenders, the outright defenders, who are the worst people in this whole process, aside from Roy Moore himself. So their responses range from, these women are liars, the fake media made this up, to what about X, what about Y? The whataboutism is all over the place. And it's like, okay, we can have all these conversations some other time, but right now there's an election on December 12th, and this man might come to the U.S. Senate, so maybe let's focus on that instead of John F. Kennedy's... Ann Coulter saying John F. Kennedy, had an affair with a 19-year-old once. It's like, okay, I'll tell you what, I definitely shouldn't have voted for JFK in 1960 then. That's how I feel.
Cheatier was funny. He's like, you're right. When JFK is next up for election, we should consider these misconduct allegations.
We should think about this. So there's a lot of whataboutism. There's the, these women are liars. And then the most insane in a whole slew of insane responses to this is Alabama State Auditor Jim Ziegler. He said, take Joseph and Mary. Mary was a teenager, and Joseph was an adult carpenter. They became parents of Jesus.
I mean,
okay. I have some. So I am Jewish.
Someone has not read. One Christian has not read the New Testament closely. I will say that.
I mean, but also like that's right in line with what Moore said. He said it's a completely manufactured story meant to defrock this campaign. They don't want to acknowledge that there is a God, and we have refused to debate them because of their very liberal stance on transgenderism. So he cut to the heart of the matter there.
This is the Eric Erickson argument, right? Eric Erickson basically of Red State had this whole long post that makes you want to just claw your eyeballs out, where he says, I understand Roy Moore's supporters and defenders and the voters who stick with them because, Democrats are for gun control and abortion. That's basically the argument there. And they don't think that being transgender is a mental health disorder.
Let's just take this piece by piece. Like the idea that it is somehow unbelievable or unsurprising or undercuts the credibility of the accusers that these allegations occurred 40 years ago is actually the exact opposite. I think the Harvey Weinstein allegations showed us that it's in fact very common for people to wait a long time to come out and make allegations like this, especially when the individual, the male involved, is a powerful person and they were a young kid. So it's outrageous that they're leaning on that.
Well, it's especially outrageous they're leaning on that because what has happened now to these women since they've come out and done this? The fucking assholes at Breitbart are sending 2 reporters down there to try to discredit these women.
Yep.
To try to attack these accusers. That's what one media outlet's doing. Sean Hannity had a guest on who said that, women usually make this stuff up and they usually do it for money. That's what Sean Hannity did.
Sean Hannity, who previously interviewed Bill O'Reilly on his show, right? Who has defended Roger Ailes and all the rest.
This is an important reminder because this happens all the time. If a young African-American kid gets shot by the cops, you'll see that they, were alleged to have smoked marijuana or were arrested before. And now with these women, it's, they were divorced or they didn't pay the taxes. It is totally irrelevant to the allegations. Whether you got divorced in the future after you were sexually molested as a 14-year-old doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah, who's been divorced quite a few times and has had an interesting romantic history? Donald Trump.
Yeah, somebody pointed oh man, one of these accusers has gone bankrupt several times and has gotten divorced several times. It's like, well, not only should we believe her, we should make her president.
And Roy Moore, he's not.
Especially the 12 women who've come out and said that Donald Trump has sexually assaulted and harassed them. Maybe we should believe them since he's a guy who's been divorced 3 times and gone bankrupt.
And again, Roy Moore is only denying the one incident with the 14-year-old because that one is the only one that's technically illegal. He's not categorically ruling out that he dated teenagers. His explanation why he couldn't have given them alcohol because it was a dry town was that factually wrong. Alcohol was readily available in the town he lived in. So there's a record of him lying and quibbling with the facts here just to sort of deny only the part that could get him in the most trouble. And everyone's sort of okay with the rest.
So let's talk about how deep the rot of tribalism on the right goes here. So in Hannity's case, a couple of sponsors for his show have decided to stop sponsoring the show, stop advertising the show after he, had people on who were defending Moore, giving Moore the benefit of the doubt. One of them is the company Keurig, makes the coffee makers. And yesterday, because Keurig pulled their ads from Hannity, a bunch of Hannity supporters decided to video themselves throwing their Keurigs out the window and destroying them. Guys, if Parachute Sheets decides to stop advertising on our show for some reason because we, defended a child molester or something like that, please don't burn your Parachute Sheets. Don't do that.
Hard disagree. If there ever comes a time where, for whatever reason, Parachute stops sponsoring their show, I want to see the fires burn for days. I wanted to create weather in Europe.
Guys, is there anyone's show you'd throw your appliances out the window for that you enjoy that much?
No, not even for the show, because an advertiser decided to go a different way.
Right. But that's the irony of it. They don't even get the irony. They're like, how dare you boycott his show? We're boycotting you. For political reasons. It is so ludicrous.
Also, it's not really how a boycott works. You already bought the product.
Yeah, they're just breaking their own shit.
You're just making yourself a little less caffeinated in the morning now.
Someone found that somebody said, so Hannity, enjoying this because he's a sleazy little goon, said, I'm going to give away 500 coffee makers. And one of his supporters was like, I hope they're Keurigs so then we can smash them. And it's like, wait, now you want you want him to go out and buy extras because of the visual gag? It's like, memes aren't real. Like, memes aren't the world, buddy.
So the question is, will this work? Will this work in Alabama? We have there's a couple polls out. The latest one said that Doug Jones is actually up 48-44 with leaners. There's one that shows it even. Of course, taking polls in the middle of a crisis like this, you're unsure what kind of responses you'll get. Sometimes maybe Republicans don't go to the phone. So we have to wait a week to see what the polling shakes out. NBC went down to Alabama and did a story where they interviewed 15 Republicans in Alabama, all of whom said, of course, we're still with more. This is just, you get a lot of, it's the media is fake, they're doing this, or they say, he's a good guy, these women are making up, they were Democrat operatives.
And also 29% of Alabama voters told the pollsters that those allegations make them more likely to vote for Roy Moore, which I assume is based on all the sort of tribalism, he's just being attacked by the big Democrats, yada nonsense.
Right.
But it's depressing.
This to me is, I think there's two pieces of this that show the kind of rot that not only Trump took advantage of, but that Trump makes worse. One is this notion that, if the news is bad, it's partisan, I don't have to trust it, that it makes you more likely to support someone just as a fuck you to whoever reported it. And that's a sort of this weird right-wing thing that sort of bubbled up into the mainstream of the culture. But the second piece of this, which I thought was fascinating, a poll came out that showed this incredible shift among evangelicals, that before Trump, people were asked, like, do you believe, basically, I'm going to, paraphrase this, but basically, do you believe someone needs to have good morals to be good at representing your values when they're in office? And it used to be that evangelicals were the one that said those things have to align, right? That you have to have good morals in your personal life and in your private life to represent people well once they're in office. And that the election of Trump caused this massive shift where now 70% of evangelicals say you don't have to have good morals in your private life to pursue the right policies once you're elected. And once you say that that's okay, once you say character doesn't matter, you see what happens with Roy Moore. That I don't think you'd see as many apologists for Roy Moore if people didn't spend months before the election apologizing for Donald Trump.
Well, and it seems like it's this negative partisanship. It's not that the supporters love Roy Moore or love Donald Trump. It's that they literally can't imagine anything worse than a Democrat winning. One of the interviewees in Alabama in that new NBC story said, if he killed Obama, we wouldn't care.
Yeah, that was a cool quote.
This is a Republican. The original joke during the campaign from Donald Trump, if I shot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue, my supporters wouldn't care. It seems truer every day.
This is someplace, we've talked about this before, like, what if it was everything was reversed and there was a Democratic version of Trump running against Dick Cheney or whatever the hypothetical we've gone over again and again. I can tell you unequivocally, right, that if the Democrats nominated somebody that was a crank and then in the weeks before the election it turned out he was a fucking pedophile.
You put up the L. We lost this one.
Yeah, we lost it. It's okay. There are things worse than losing a fucking election, Hugh Hewitt. It's not the end of the world.
Hugh Hewitt, constitutional scholar Hugh Hewitt, saying that maybe we should cancel the election.
We don't like the news. Cancel the election.
Yeah, he's like, we can't allow the people to be trapped with a manifestly unqualified nominee like you guys just handed us with the president of the United States. What are you talking about, Hugh?
Yeah, I know. He cited the fact that one time Democrats replaced Bob Torricelli with Frank Lautenberg right before the election. Fine. If they want to replace Roy Moore with someone right before the election, do that. You don't cancel the fucking election.
Also, when
we?
Is our moral standard the worst thing New Jersey Democrats ever did? like that's where in the fucking New Testament is that?
I want to move on to the foreign trip, but before we get there, I just want to talk about Bannon.
Yes.
Especially this has been getting used
very
particularly annoying.
frustrated by
Tommy's
this.
goat.
So right before the more stuff really broke, Bannon does this interview with the New York Times where he talks about a strategy to defeat McConnell, and he's this brilliant strategist, and it's all about a war against McConnell and all this kind of stuff. It goes unsaid during the interview that Ralph Northam just won in Virginia after Bannon basically said that Gillespie was going to win because he embraced Corey Stewart's Confederate campaign. Is Bannon overrated here?
Yes.
Why does he still get this?
First of all political operatives are overrated. You're good until you're not. Like we all lose some, we all win some. But let's be clear about who Steve Bannon is he is an opportunist. He is not some genius political operator. He got fired from the White House after 6 months. He failed to pass any significant part of Trump's agenda. And the things he did work on, like the Muslim ban, he fucked up royally. He declared Trumpism was on the ballot in Virginia and then got worked. The candidate he recruited to run for Senate in Alabama was accused of child molestation. No one has ever been worse at his job than Steve Bannon. He's a guy who works at a racist blog that defends child molesters and lies for a living. And for the fucking New York Times to walk him through the office and do this puff piece bullshit video, like with his chummy garbage ending where he tells them how great their product is and they kiss his ass like he's some Svengali genius, is fucking outrageous. Like, they are pathetic supplicants to this guy. Like, not just the New York Times, but the press cover him like he is a candidate, like he's some shadow president. He got run out of the building.
And he's a conspiracy peddler, right? Like
he's a liar.
He's a liar. He was up in fucking New Hampshire spreading a conspiracy that the election was stolen in New Hampshire in 2016 when there's no fucking evidence of that, when everyone has proved it wrong, when Republicans in the state say it's not true. He's out there now saying that all the allegations against Roy Moore are some conspiracy by fucking Jeff Bezos and the Washington Post.
Yeah.
When it's a Trump-supporting Republican who accused him of doing this to her when she was 14 years old. Like, Steve Bannon is a fucking liar. Stop pretending he is a political operative that is on the fucking level. He's a liar.
He's a crank. He is a crank that was elevated by Donald Trump because Donald Trump was surrounded by the dregs of conservative public life. He is and that he is taken seriously now because Donald Trump pulled an upset because he won.
Winners are held in the highest esteem in Washington above all else. You can have any kind of sin, but if you are a winner in Washington, you will get taken seriously. You will get invited to the dinners. You will get invited to the New York Times.
And the thing is, though,
that's what it takes. All you need to do is win.
And he won, and that's true. But that didn't validate every single thing that Steve Bannon ever said. It didn't make Steve Bannon a strategic wizard. It made him, in many ways, a very lucky crank whose ideas are taken much more seriously now than they should. And we see that in Virginia. We see that in Alabama. We see that across the country. He's got a proof point of 1.
He's just the worst. And also, like, the Republican Party, the House Republicans, sent an emissary over to his office to kiss his ass to make sure he wouldn't be intervening in their elections like he is in the Senate elections. It is so pathetic the way they're bowing down to this guy. All he is a white supremacist backed up by a whole bunch of money from Robert Mercer.
And like what links...
we don't need to fear this guy and his lying bullshit.
He doesn't also, it's like, oh wow, what a philosopher. It's like, what links Roy Moore to all these other people that he's recruited? He's a guy that, he's a troll, he's a billionaire funded guy, he's causing chaos, right? But like ultimately, what does this all amount to? Like, it's nothing. There's no heft there. There's no intellectual rigor there. There's just a racist crank who has some Seinfeld money.
Bannon, bad.
Stop kissing his ass.
Yeah, stop kissing his ass.
New York Times et al.
Okay, let's talk about the foreign trip. Everything seemed to be relatively quiet during Trump's 11-day Asia trip until he had a bit of an episode on Saturday. I guess he got a little tired.
Meltdown.
First, he said that he believes that Putin believes that Russia didn't interfere with our election and called the heads of our intel agencies political hacks. His direct quote was, "Every time he sees me, Putin, he says, 'I didn't do that,' and I really believe that when he tells me that, he means it."
And he said Putin feels very insulted.
Yes, he feels very insulted.
They did do that.
So Trump later seemed to walk back the statement and say that he's with our intel agencies as currently constituted.
He was holding a fucking newspaper,
right?
While General Kelly stared at him from off screen. You say what I said to you to say.
Distinction without a difference here is like, yeah, I'm with our intel agencies, but I do believe that Putin in his head believes that he didn't do it, which means that you believe Putin.
It's not, don't even give in to the nonsense.
He's so confused because he talks about, he's like, well, people don't realize how much they've been suffering under sanctions, and if we stopped that and we had a better relationship, we could get help from them in Ukraine and Syria and all these places. He doesn't understand that the sanctions that are squeezing Putin are the result of like invading Crimea. Right. Going to war essentially with Ukraine. I mean, he just is like, he will go to any lengths to try to explain away what happened in this election. And he's just giving up the farm to Putin, giving up the farm to Xi Jinping. It is embarrassing.
We'll talk about that, Tommy. What are the consequences of Trump's statements besides, driving us all crazy? Like, how do Putin and other world leaders see that, and how do they react to that kind of thing?
I mean, I think the story of this trip, like, it was sort of a fine trip. Like, nothing really bad happened. There wasn't some huge deliverable that didn't go well. But what all these countries have figured out is Trump lives and breathes hyperbole. Usually it's him saying it about himself. If they give him the red carpet treatment, if they kiss his ass a little bit, he is happy as a clam. They don't actually have to give him anything in terms of like,
deliverables,
priorities that we want as a nation. They just need to kiss his ass. So he just sort of skirts through this meeting, and he
just
goes
wants to give him a 5-star Yelp review.
Yeah, exactly. He meets with a guy like Rodrigo Duterte, the president of the Philippines, who is literally a mass murderer, and does this chummy handshake, and they have a bilateral meeting, and they don't press him on the fact that he's like indiscriminately rounding up people and killing them because they're suspected to be drug dealers. I mean, so like we are giving up our moral leadership on the world stage. We pulled out of TPP, which was a big trade deal with all these countries. Everyone but us announced a deal while he was there for a new sort of TPP minus America deal, which in any other world would be seen as a huge humiliation for the United States. But it kind of just gets glossed over because it's seen as like Bannonist politics to walk away from trade, even though these countries are now, moving on without us.
Yeah, we've got a major international trade agreement now without America. We have the Paris deal, climate accord, which now has every country, including Syria. Syria joined.
From the idiots who used to say that leading from behind, a background quote in a New Yorker story, was the worst thing ever to happen to our foreign policy.
Now we're not leading at all. Be remiss if I didn't bring up the North Korea tweet from Trump.
That was weird.
Why would Kim Jong-un insult me by calling me old when I would never call him short and fat? Oh, well, I try so hard to be his friend, and maybe someday that will happen. I would actually say that the second half of that quote is what is he trying to be his friend for? Maybe what was that?
I don't know. He's got a 100-word vocabulary. He's lost in the world. He was very tired. We don't understand any of it.
Trump 280 Twitter, by the way, is the fucking worst.
Yeah, it's too much.
280 characters on Twitter is awful for everyone, and it's the
more.
worst thing Twitter has ever done.
Yeah.
But with Trump, it is magnified.
Honestly,
although he's lost some of his step.
It's gonna cause the extra characters is gonna cause a war.
It's gonna get us there. It's just the guy is like, it's so
I guess
General Kelly saying that he doesn't follow his tweets.
Like, no, I'm sure you don't.
We give Kelly. Right. Like there are all these little political lies that everyone's okay with. Like when Barack Obama was like, "Well, I don't look at the polls." Like, yes, you did all the time. So we give this little wiggle room to all these operatives and candidates. But in this case, it's like, hey, bud, dereliction of duty. He's talking shit to a nuclear armed lunatic in North Korea.
Again, I get when people say, "Oh, we pay too much attention to his tweets at home." I can understand that to a point, but in foreign policy, the president's statements are policy often.
As Sean Spicer said they were, right?
I mean, I sort of
think it's much more dangerous.
I divide Trump's behavior on these trips into like the two baskets, and one of them are the moral and like public facing calamities, and like that's him getting all chummy with Duterte and him saying look, Putin looked me in the eyes and said something, and because I'm a vulnerable mark whose ego can easily be stroked, I believe him, and now I'm in love with him, and I'll do whatever Putin says. But then there's like the larger, right? Like the trade deal is the bigger deal, right? Like I almost feel like we're having on the trade thing, like, oh, that's China taking advantage of Trump. That's China getting to skip a few spaces ahead because we elected our worst person. The Trump conversation with Putin, it just felt like deja vu. Like I feel like we've been through this exact same news cycle before. Trump talks to Putin, he gets charmed, he says we have great chemistry because he talks like he's on the fucking Love Connection in 1987, and then the press gets mad, and then he gives another statement where he says what the staffers want to say, and then we're right back to baseline.
I can't tell if it's him getting charmed by Putin or he is so stubborn and proud that he knows in his mind, he's like, oh, when I'm going to have this meeting with Putin, the press is going to say, oh, now he likes Putin again, and I'm not going to give it to them. I'm not going to say I was wrong. I'm not going to be tough on this guy because the press wants me to be tough on this guy. And so I'm not going to do it just to spite them.
And of course, undergirding all of this is the strange reluctance to be critical of Putin, where sometimes people want to be a mark because it seems that for Trump, being a mark
as if he has something on him.
I think it's all of the above. I think he was charmed by Xi Jinping, who like walked him around the old city and kissed his ass. I think Putin confuses him. He doesn't want to believe that they interfered in the election because it makes him feel inadequate. And then like you look at someplace like the Philippines. I mean, I think he doesn't push Duterte on human rights because he probably fundamentally doesn't care. But also, he's got a $150 million project going up in Manila. Okay, This guy is compromised all over the planet. And don't tell me for a second that that's not his first priority, because he acts like it is, because we visit Trump properties everywhere he goes.
I mean, if Trump, whenever Trump is not president, at some point he is going to not be able to stop himself from saying, I made money on this whole thing. And that's coming. But
I did great.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the country, the stock market did great, I did great.
And that estate tax cut too. That really helped me.
Yeah, I know.
So that pass through, oh man, I'm doing great.
I made out big time. But I feel like that handshake, that deeply strange kind of crossed over arm handshake where Trump looks like he's taking a dump because he's
can't
because he actually has never stretched before, right? Because he's like completely he's never done any exercises at golf, so he's like his face is all contorting. He's holding these people's hands. It's a reflection of everything, right? Because it's like staff should have prevented that from happening, right? You don't do fraternity handshakes.
I hate making fun of the pictures because everyone did that with Obama.
No.
These are such little things.
Barack Obama did not do a double-fisted handshake with a mass murderer.
It's something funny. I don't think it's reflective of anything.
I think
else.
the Duterte part of the handshake doesn't bother me. It's the Duterte.
It's the Duterte part.
Right,
That's what I'm saying. That staff would have stepped in and stopped him from doing a weird double-armed fucking dance with a mass murderer because. And same thing with, by the way, him not taking questions when he's in China, right? That there's no one good with Trump who's like, hey, this is a place where we should push back. There's no one around him who has the kind of capacity to push back.
Shutting out the White House photographer, Doug Mills couldn't get a picture that day and everything. I mean, this is it's basic staff work that doesn't happen.
That's why Doug Mills posted that picture, because he's like, I'll take this of a screenshot and make you look ridiculous.
In 2009, we did not take press questions with Obama in China. That was a mistake. In 2014, we did. But like when you're a press staffer or an advanced staffer or you're preparing for these trips, it is incumbent upon you to fight for this kind of access, whether it's a news conference or whether it is simply like getting the pool into like pool sprays or whatever it might be. Not only did they not fight for them, but when the press was brought into the Duterte spray, he called them spies and started making fun of
Trump
the press
just
corps.
Giggled
Trump
and
just
sat there,
yucked it up, and refused to take their questions.
That to me that was the most unforgivable thing that he did.
And
is just let that happen.
As people pointed out, accusing reporters of being spies is often how they're tortured. Right? It's like, it's not a joke.
No, it's not a joke, especially when you have a fucking mass murderer there. Okay, let's talk about something we can do something about, which is tax reform. The Senate Republicans outlined their tax plan last Thursday. This week, the House is going to try to pass their plan. The Senate's going to try to get their plan out of committee. Here's the differences with the House bill. The Senate bill delays the corporate tax cut for an extra year. It preserves the mortgage deduction and the medical expense deduction, and yet it gets rid of state and local tax deductions altogether. It doubles the estate tax deduction from $5 million to $11 million, but doesn't end it. So all these sort of accounting gimmicks, it's the same kind of crap, because the Nonpartisan Joint Committee on Taxation, which is something that is cited by Republicans, says under the Senate plan, 20 million households earning less than $200,000 would see a tax increase. 20 million under $200,000. Another 50 million households under $200,000 see no tax cut at all. And yet, millionaires get an average tax cut of $48,000.
It's like a comic book evil version of what a Republican tax
Speaking
plan
of
would be.
Speaking of that, here's comic book evil. It retains the tax break for owners of golf courses.
Come on.
How's that?
Shut up.
That's true. That's true. So Trump this morning, throwing another grenade into the negotiation, says he called for a deeper tax cut for people making over $500,000,
paid
for by repealing the individual mandate in the Affordable Care Act, which would cause everyone's premiums to rise. So in order to give people making over $500,000 an even bigger tax cut, we're going to have premiums rise on middle-class people.
Seems
That's
dumb.
where we're at right now. And here's the problem, though, guys. there are no confirmed no votes in the Senate on this bill, which is our only hope because the goons in the House, Paul Ryan's going to get them to pass anything. By the way, you got all these Republicans in California and New Jersey and New York who are basically voting to raise taxes on a whole bunch of their constituents. On a whole bunch. I can't wait for the fucking ads in California.
These people,
for the 7 Republicans
the idea
in this
that they're
state.
going to fucking do this.
7 Republicans in this state are sitting in districts that Hillary Clinton won. Those
This
7
is a
Republicans,
bill to fuck California, to fuck New York, and fuck New Jersey.
Yes.
That is what this bill is designed to do. It is designed to say to wealthy blue states, y'all can go fuck yourselves. California Republicans and New York Republicans are going to go along with this, even though it is literally designed to punish their constituents. It is that is the goal. It is the goal to take money from middle class and relatively affluent New Yorkers, Californians, DC residents, San Francisco people, and take it and just give it to heirs.
Just a quick note to those Republicans and the people living in those districts. If you vote for this bill, the 3 of us will be visiting your district to talk about it. I promise you that.
we will be doing a number on the California
I bet there will be a
Republicans who vote for
whole
this
lot of other
legislation.
digital dollars and surrogates visiting your districts. Like we're going to talk about it. That's all we're saying. We're going to talk about it.
The path to 218 in the House already ran through these California districts and some of these New York districts and some of these New Jersey districts. Now they're all going to vote to raise taxes on their constituents so that Ivanka and Don Jr. can get a big tax break.
It's almost as if
Great.
Paul Ryan.
Go for it.
It's almost as
And
if
Eric.
Paul Ryan between the
Don't leave Eric
healthcare votes and this tax bill. It's almost as if Paul Ryan created a series of votes to make sure his colleagues lose. Like it is designed to make them lose.
If this bill passes, Eric and Don Jr. will be able to cut the tails off of at least 4 more endangered elephants by the end
Maybe
of the
they'll
year.
get that last white rhino.
Yeah.
So here's the problem.
They like white rhinos.
There's no votes in the Senate yet, and I think one of the reasons is they think they can just sneak this through. They're already employing the full lie about this strategy. Both Paul Ryan and McConnell said that there would be no tax increases on the middle class. Paul Ryan's office had to walk it back because obviously he's too cowardly to do it himself. McConnell himself walked it back. So they're already getting caught in these lies. I think what we have to do this week is very important for everyone who's listening to put a tremendous amount of pressure on the Senate especially to say no to this bill. People like the John McCains, the Jeff Flakes, the Bob Corkers, the Susan Collins, the Lisa Murkowskis. All of them have expressed various levels of concern. None of them have been as opposed to this as some of them were on the healthcare legislation. So it is extremely important to call your members of Congress this week and to let them know that you're opposed to this bill. There's also going to be the Move On folks are organizing a protest rally Wednesday outside the Capitol. This is definitely something that we can do something about if we put enough pressure.
If people like Corker and Murkowski and Collins adhere to the standards they've set, they should be no votes, right? Yeah. Each and every one of them has set various markers for what this bill should do, and it meets none of them because it's completely insane. And the thing about what Paul Ryan said and what Mitch McConnell said, right? That they went too far, right? Because they said everybody gets a tax cut. There's a deeper lie here, right? Everything about what Paul Ryan says, like this is a bill for the middle class, this is aimed at the middle class, it's just flatly untrue, right? It's untrue in a way that you can get away with a PolitiFact rating, but like this is not a bill for the middle class, right? It's mostly for corporations, and the tiny chunk that's left over for people, the vast majority of that is for rich people. And honestly, it's not even for the working rich. It's not even for your wealthy people with businesses. It's for the idle rich. It is a bill for the idle fucking rich.
But it's not just not for the middle class. It actually fucks the middle class. It raised tax. It's going to raise taxes on 20 million middle class families making under $200,000 a year. That's a lot of fucking.
And it's based on an economic theory that's been called supply side economics or trickle down economics that has been tried again and again and again. It doesn't work. And you know what these companies will do? Companies are making record profits. When they get a big tax cut, you know what they're probably going to do? Buy back a bunch of the shares in the company so that the shares they currently own go up in value.
Like they're not hiring people.
It's not likely.
We've done this before. We've done this before. They have the money to hire people.
Tried it.
There was a great analogy on the Daily this morning about trickle down. Did you listen to about the horse and the sparrow? Like trickle down is bad enough. And now it's basically saying that you feed the horse extra so that there's more shit for the birds to eat. That's how they're treating us.
Horse and oats.
Number for Congress, 202-224-3121. That's number 1 this week. You're going to call your members of Congress, especially if you're living in California, New Jersey, and New York. Call those House members who are going to definitely probably raise taxes on you. Number 2 thing you can do this week, Go donate to Doug Jones in Alabama.
Yes.
There is a chance we do. It was a moral imperative. We said this on the Thursday board. It was a moral imperative to defeat Roy Moore before these allegations came out because he doesn't believe in the rule of law and has proved that his entire career. Is an even more moral imperative now.
He is more dangerous than Donald Trump. He is the most dangerous person we have elected in as long as any of us can remember.
And
Give
this
him $5, $10, 15, anything you can do.
And this isn't a long shot anymore. Like, we can win this thing.
Yes,
we can win in Alabama.
Yes.
And that actually puts the Senate in play. Like, there is so much at stake in Alabama right now. End of thought.
When we come back, we'll be talking to the host of Pod Save the People, DeRay McKesson. Pod Save America is brought to you by Sonos.
Oh, good.
The latest addition to the Sonos home sound system, the Sonos One, blends great sound with Amazon Alexa, the easy-to-use voice service, for hands-free control of your music and more. Use your voice to play songs while you cook, tell Alexa to turn the volume up while you're in the shower. You can even request a lullaby out loud when you're tucking in the kids. You're excited about that, Lovett, aren't you?
When I'm tucking in Pundit?
Alexa, play a lullaby for Pundit.
Alexa, play Taking Care of Business.
Turn on lights, adjust the temperature, and more. With Sonos One, you can control your smart home devices with your voice. One simple app controls the entire system. All your favorite streaming services, audiobooks, podcasts in one place.
Do you have any other smart things in your house? I wouldn't have anything to activate right now. I have a Sonos One. I'm very excited about it.
Nothing with my voice. Nothing with my voice.
Open the fridge and someone put some food in there.
Make me a coffee, Keurig. Control everything from songs to volume to rooms. Since Sonos is continually updating with new features, services, and skills, your music and voice options will both keep getting better over time. Sonos is offering the listeners of Pod Save America 10% off one order of $2,500 or less for any product on Sonos.com. This offer is available for a limited time only and cannot be combined with other discounts or promotions.
Alexa, play Love It or Leave It. Oh, fine. Play Pod Save America.
Alexa, play the a cappella version of Love It or Leave It.
Tommy hated that.
Use the
It's
promo
just,
code.
Revealing.
It's well,
There's
is
a
it
joke
at this
about it
point?
being revealing.
It's less revealing at this point.
Is it?
It's more. It's more on the nose, I think. Use the promo code PSA10, capital PSA10, at Sonos.com to receive this offer. Again, that's PSA10, capital PSA10, at Sonos.com. Go get yourself some Sonos One.
Get
Start
yourself a
commanding
Sonos.
everything around your home today. Pod Save America is brought to you by Helix. There are a ton of online mattress retailers popping up these days, all with a one-size-fits-all solution to a better sleep. Guess what?
What?
One size fits all, it doesn't work.
You know, I heard from this guy. Right? This guy said he ordered from a non-Helix place, and he said, "Oh, I'll get a fancy mattress." All it came was a canvas bag filled with straw. Got to be careful.
Helix Sleep offers something that doesn't exist anywhere else, a mattress personalized to your unique preferences and sleeping style that won't set you back thousands of dollars. Go to helixsleep.com/crooked. Take their simple 2 to 3 minute sleep quiz. They'll build a custom mattress that will be the best thing you've ever slept on. For couples, they even personalize each side of the mattress. Also, check out the Helix Foundation. The
What's
Helix
that?
Foundation is 7.5
7.5 inches of what, John?
You're a child. Solid pine. Upholstered with the same woven you bro. 7.5.
You guys
Upholstered
missed
with the
so
same.
many times of me trying to get John to joke about this.
Lovett is just an immature teenage boy.
I won't be taught
Upholstered
this
with
way.
the same woven fabric as your Helix mattress. It can be built and broken down in only 2 to 3 minutes. Compatible with any mattress with a 100-night sleep trial and a 5-year warranty. Everyone from GQ to Cosmopolitan to the New York Times are all talking about Helix. And once you try it, you'll know why. Your custom mattress arrives direct to your door in a week. Shipping is completely free.
I know why, John. Because of that solid pine foundation.
You good?
7.5 inches.
You good?
I'm good now.
Yeah, okay, we're keeping that. Try it for 100 nights. If you don't love it, they'll pick it up and refund you in full. Go to helixsleep.com/cricket right now, and you'll get $50 towards your custom mattress. That's helixsleep.com/cricket for $50 off your order. helixsleep.com/cricket.
John didn't like some of the jokes, and we cut them.
On the pod, we have the host of Pod Save the People, DeRay McKesson. How's it going, DeRay?
Hey, I'm good. How are you guys doing? It's cold over here on the East Coast.
It is. I was just back, and it was very cold, which is, going to be a challenge when I wear the holiday-themed romp hem I bought as a challenge to you.
Did you actually buy one?
I purchased it, DeRay.
That is amazing. What is it like? Is it red, and green, or is it some other holiday?
It's Hanukkah themed, and it says it's lit.
Is this real?
It's happening.
When are we? Oh my goodness!
So I'm letting you know, and the ball is in your court.
Elijah's content eyes just lit up.
Oh God. So Dre, one story we didn't get to today I want to talk to you about is there were a couple stories over the weekend and from last week about how Trump is reshaping the judiciary. And, one of his nominations, this guy, Brett Talley, 36-year-old who has never tried a case and who's received a rare not qualified rating from the American Bar Association, and yet has a nomination advanced through the Senate Judiciary Committee on Thursday on a party line vote. This has happened now in quite a few cases. It's been completely under the radar. How do we get people to sound the alarm on this?
Yeah, it's sort of wild is that you think about there are 4 people nominated by Trump who have been judged not qualified by the American Bar Association, and 2 of those were found to be not qualified by a majority of the committee, and the other 2 were by unanimous vote. So it's like that's just not happened in many cases in the country. And you also think about what he has done to the appeals court is that Trump has already appointed 8 appellate judges, the most this early in the presidency since Nixon, and then just sent a 9th nominee. So he is very quickly going to change the courts in a way that, these people are appointed for life. And it's like one of the things that he just doesn't get as much press as some of the other awful stuff that he's doing, but we have to talk about it. That 36-year-old is wild. Is that how brazen and bold is that to put somebody in the court who's never tried a case before? That's insulting to everybody, and you just see the Republicans just allow this to happen is also wild.
Yeah, I mean, it should be noted that 2 people who voted this guy out of committee are Ben Sasse and Jeff Flake, 2 people that are ostensibly the best that side can do in terms of being anti-Trump. And man, very good at talking about it, but this was an easy case where they could have done the right thing and did not.
Another stat that jumped out at me today is 91% of Trump's nominees are white, 81% are male. They are not even trying to have any sort of diversity ideologically, race, gender. They are just packing it with the youngest, most conservative men they can find.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at this event once, and this is before the election, and somebody said if Trump wins, trying to undo the damage will be like trying to unring a bell.
Yeah.
And that this is a good example of we'll be living with these decisions for a long time. And the courts have often been the third party check on the other power, but what happens when they're all in collusion?
Yeah.
Right. Right. And I think it is one of the most damaging things he's doing in his presidency because, at least so far, his legislative agenda has stalled. He hasn't been able to pass much at all. And a lot of his executive orders, if we get a Democratic president there, we can undo a lot of the executive orders. Like we said, these appointments are for life in the judiciary.
Yeah.
And we should know one of the reasons they're happening is it used to take 60 votes to confirm some of these judges, and because Mitch McConnell held up every single one of Obama's judges and we couldn't get anyone through, Harry Reid got rid of the judicial filibuster, and now it only takes 51 votes to get a judge through, which also makes, by the way, the 2018 elections all the more important in the Senate. And the Doug Jones thing plays into this too, because if we flip Nevada, we flip Arizona, which are 2 very flippable Senate seats, and Doug Jones now goes to the Senate, they lose their majority, and we can stop them from appointing judges.
Right. But hey, guys, I mean, not to be alarmist, but if you were trying to sort of lay the groundwork for an autocracy, you would systematically undercut the press. You would systematically undercut institutions like gutting the State Department. You would pack the courts full of ideologues who will not act as a check on you. I mean, this is something that's incredibly worrisome. And it's an instance where there's almost nothing we can do about judges except for win the next election, which is why people need to be fired up about this.
Yeah.
Doug Jones for Senate.
And a lot of local judges are elected, so it will be important that we stay tuned to this so that any judges who come in with these wild ideologies that people can organize, because nobody organizes around judge elections across the country. It's just not a hot topic, but we'll need to pay attention to this in a way we haven't before.
That's a very good point. Yeah, a lot. I mean, when we were in Philadelphia, a bunch of the Pennsylvania judges were elected. That happened in a lot of states. Judges run for office, so it's something to keep an eye on. DeRay, who's on Pod Save the People this week?
We have David Kamen, who was a former, he worked with you all.
He did, yeah.
In the White House. He is a tax expert. We also have Mirza, who wrote The Color of Money, who is an expert on the racial wealth gap, and she's joining us. So I'm excited for us to have another conversation about how we close the racial wealth gap and to add some more nuance to the tax conversation.
Yeah, I'm guessing Kamen's not a fan of this tax plan, huh?
He is not a fan. It helps us figure out why we should all not be a fan.
Yeah, no, we were just talking about that too. It's another one of these things. It's sort of going under the radar here, but something that we could stop if we all hit the phones this week, because they're both trying to pass these plans out of committee, and they are very bad plans that will increase inequality in a huge way. So, and
always again with the government by sucker punch, which is delay, and then we're having a vote and this is going to happen now. Yeah. That's it.
They say that one of the things that David talks about is that the timeline is to get this done by Christmas. That's nuts.
Ugh. Yeah, it is. And this week is critical because they think that if they can pass it out of committee in the Senate and then pass the House this week, by the end of this week, they'll have enough time to do it by Christmas. But if we can delay that somehow by throwing a wrench in this, then the timeline slips. And the more it slips, the better it gets for us. And especially if Doug Jones wins, again, McConnell would have one less vote for this in the Senate. It would make the path even tougher. So everyone get on the phones this week to stop the tax plan. DeRay, Pod Save the People drops Tuesday. Thanks for joining us, and we'll all be sure to check it out.
Cool. Talk to you guys later.
Romper, buy the Romp'em.
Bye-bye.
Bye, DeRay. Pod Save America is brought to you by Tommy John.
Tommy John.
Cool.
When things sound too good to be true, there's a good chance that they are. But when Tommy John says they're unbelievable underwear, undershirts, socks, and loungewear.
What are we, the hef?
Oh, yeah, they have some long kind of karate pants type things. They're very comfortable.
I don't think
you walking around in those karate pants, Tom?
Yeah, all day long, man.
Look at
Hammer pants,
Look at this green
pants.
belt.
They will they will positively change your life.
It's true.
And that's an absolute fact. Please describe your favorite Tommy John products you've received lately.
I will tell you this, guys. I've just come back from being on the road for 10 days.
How was it?
It was great, in part, because I brought 100% Tommy John underwear.
Only TJ products?
Only Tommy John underwear. And because I know how I am, I left one behind in L.A. because I knew that I would have no clean underwear left at the end of this trip because I'll time it equal. You time it out. You want to make sure.
Of course.
And you know what? Another day with Tommy John, I'm doing fantastic.
Did you have a Go Anywhere Quick Dry Henley, which was engineered with a 4-way stretch, antimicrobial fibers, and a modern fit?
Good pronunciation of I looked at that word. I was like, how am I going to get there?
John
Antimicrobial.
John was lost in it.
Or the crew neck second skin tee, which comes in
those are
vibrant
good.
colors, a modern fit and premium, indulgently soft fabric, make them a must-have in every guy's rotation.
I wore that too at the Beacon.
Also, Tommy John's best-selling fabrics, the second skin chrome boxer brief, the second skin chrome hawthorn print, and cool cotton Mitch stripe boxer brief. Woo! Hurry to TommyJohn.com/cricket to save 20% off your first order.
Great.
That's TommyJohn.com/cricket for 20% off. TommyJohn.com.
We're not using other underwear.
TommyJohn.com/cricket.
This is the underwear we're wearing now. We're not using the other ones anymore. We're using Tommy John underwear.
Speaking of not using things anymore, Pod Save America is brought to you by the Cash App, the only app we're using.
We're not using the other ones.
The only Cash App we're using
is the Cash
App.
The Cash App
the only payment app we're using is the Cash App.
I'm sorry. Did the other apps help Jose Andres feed people in Puerto Rico who have been suffering for months?
Maybe we didn't check, but probably not.
No chance in hell.
Those apps, we're not using
them.
They're basically harming people.
Pod Save is the code. You put it in, you get $5. $5 goes to World Central Kitchen, helps people in Puerto Rico. I don't know. You know the rest of the drill. Just
7.5 inches of what, John?
Solid pine. On the pod today, we are very lucky to have the former anchor of the CBS Evening News and the author of the new book, What Unites Us, Dan Rather. Dan, welcome to Pod Save America.
Glad to be with you. Thank you very much for having me on.
So you were on the front lines reporting on the struggle for civil rights, the Vietnam War, Watergate, Iran-Contra. How does the Trump presidency compare to these other historical moments of crisis and challenge that you've reported on?
Well, the Trump presidency, first and foremost, and I think increasingly people who didn't know it before beginning to recognize it, is unique. Of course, every presidency is unique in its own ways, but we have never had a president who, among other things, many other things, so relentlessly and so personally attacks the whole idea of a free and independent, fiercely independent when necessary press. He's directed his venom at individual reporters. He's directed it at specific journalistic institutions, and then he's indicted and found guilty the entire press by saying they are, quote, enemies of the people. It's the rare president in our history, in fact, I can't find any, who didn't have any ill feelings about the press at any time. Every president goes through a period, and sometimes several periods, and says things about press coverage, sometimes valid, sometimes not. But even during the Nixon administration, it was nothing to compare with what we are seeing now. And, of course, it fits into the larger story of the Trump presidency, one of the tone and tenor of his presidency has been negative and, frankly, seeks to divide us for his own partisan, political, and personal benefit. So this effort to convince people that, well, this is normal. Yes, Donald Trump's a little different, but he's shaking things up. But, maybe it was necessary. This is not normal. It is not in keeping with the American spirit. And overall and in the main, and that includes what he does about the press, it's divisive, not unifying.
Dan, when I see things the Trump administration does and says, I often fall into the trap of hyperbole and assume it's the most hostile they've ever been to the press, or this is the most egregious lie I've seen out of a White House over some period of time. But you covered a whole series of presidents. How does the hostility to the press and the dishonesty you see compare to, say, the height of the Vietnam War, when we had generals and politicians alike telling us everything was going well, when in fact we were losing on the battlefield, or other such sort of times of heightened conflict during the Nixon administration?
Well, very good point. However, none of those who criticized the press, none of those in power, including President Johnson got frustrated with coverage of the press because it wasn't reporting the war on the ground the way he wanted it reported. However, none of them, from President Johnson on down, including the generals, number one, they never attacked journalism as a whole. Mm-hmm. They never said anything even remotely approaching that the press is, quote, enemies of the people. On occasion, they directed their frustration and anger at individual reporters, but always they directed it at what the reporters had reported, not at the reporters personally. Have a frame of reference here. You remember during the campaign when President Trump, what a terrible picture it was, ridiculed an individual reporter who had physical challenges and mimicked him. There was, in the Vietnam War, we were a divided people. Just as many or more people were deeply worried whether the country would hold together during the Vietnam War, but attacks on the press were of a whole different level, far below anything we're seeing during the Trump administration. And I mentioned before that President Nixon didn't like the press at all, and through surrogates, he had attacks on the press. But again, out of the president's own mouth, nothing approaching what President Trump has said. And even with the surrogates, they rarely really came down hard on individual reporter personally. Mm-hmm. It's just, I can't emphasize enough, because this is not just an issue that affects journalists. Of course it affects us, affects our reputation, affects our credibility. But this is something that goes to the very heart of our core beliefs and, frankly, what has united us for all these years our country's been in existence. And that is a recognition that a free and independent press is the red beating heart of freedom and democracy. And if you don't have it as part of the check and balance on power, then you're going to have a different kind of country.
Mm-hmm. So you have had something of a renaissance on social media. You've become like a Facebook star. Now, usually Facebook stars tend to be very young people jumping off of buildings into pools from great heights. How have you managed to compete with that? What is this sudden appeal to a lot of people kind of looking to you in this moment?
Well, I continue to be amazed by what's happened on the content I file on social media. I never expected anything approaching this kind of reach. I say that with humility, because I should. There are plenty of people who have more reach than I have. But to reach on a regular basis 2.5, 3 million people on a Facebook page and sometimes have posts reach, 3, 5, occasionally 20 million people. Frankly, I never expected it. I'm still rather amazed by it. I know what I'm trying to do on Facebook. I have my own Facebook page and then a companion Facebook page called News and Guts, which we expand out to a little more news coverage. That if I have anything to contribute, and I'm not sure that I do, but if I have anything to contribute, it's some context and perspective, including historical perspective, and to try to present an experienced and maybe at my best steady voice. I can only conclude that that's been the appeal of it. I am, among many things I'm amazed about, and I use that word measurably, is that there's so many people that are included in our audience now. And let's face it, I haven't been regularly on full-scale television for almost 12 years. I left CBS News 12 years ago. And while, yes, I expected some people who remember when I was on the evening news and remember when I was on 60 Minutes, to find a whole new audience of people who range in age roughly 18 to 35, a large part of our Facebook audience, is, amazing. The only word I can think about it is also gratifying.
Do you think it has anything to do with like a sense of mistrust? I mean, has to be some connection with people feeling like they don't trust what the news is doing now, and then going to somebody they maybe associate with their childhood or with a different era in journalism?
Well, this is a constant challenge. There are two parts of that. First, there are those people who for a very long time have believed that the press is heavily skewed to what they call the liberal or progressive side. Those people have been around for a long time. Then the other main group are younger people who don't have memories of the civil rights struggle or the Vietnam War, who just have grown up with so much coming at them that they tend not to trust anybody. The best we can do as journalists, and what I try to do is, first of all, I try to listen to people. And one of the suggestions that I make, and what unites us, is we need a more civil tone and need to listen to one another. So I try to listen to criticism. I always try to make the following points in a short list. Number one, we make mistakes in journalism. I've made my mistakes. There's no way to do journalism perfectly. It's a rather crude art. It's not a precise science. But try to explain to people that what I tried to do for most of my career, and what most journalists try to do, is be an honest broker of information. So, in answer to your question, how you deal with it, you try to listen to people, try to address their points, including, yes, we do make mistakes, and when we make mistakes, we should come full, but never buy into the idea that, the press should be completely discounted, that none of them are doing very much, and they deal in, quote, fake news, and they're, quote, enemies of the people. This is, quite frankly, unreasonable. And I do find that if one listens and then tries to make your point about what good journalism is and how many people are striving to do it, we can make some headway, but you're never going to convince everybody.
So the New York Times recently rolled out a new social media policy that basically prohibits all reporters from posting anything that would jeopardize the appearance of objectivity. It says, if our journalists are perceived as biased or if they engage in editorializing on social media, that can undercut the credibility of the entire newsroom. What do you make about this growing worry among mainstream outlets about even the perception of bias, from other people? It seems like you're not as concerned about that when you're posting your Facebook essays. Not that they're biased, but you've been sounding the alarm about Trump. What do you think about some outlets just being almost more concerned about balance than they are about anything else?
Well, first of all, I consider balance a very, I won't say dangerous, but a problematic word for journalists, because all too often striving for balance, laying down a policy of balance, really can take you pretty quickly into false equivalency of saying, there are two sides to every story and the two sides are pretty much equal. First of all, some stories have 4, 6, or 8 sides, not just 2 sides. But also there's the fact that the equivalency cannot be and should not be always drawn even. But to your point about the Times policy and others that are worried about, quote, objectivity, it's not in me to criticize the New York Times, which is a great journalistic institution, and I think a national treasure is the Washington Post and some other newspapers and print people who are trying to do a good job. However, I think it's very important, and particularly in the post-digital divide, our heavily technological electronic journalism age, to make it clear to news consumers that this would be my preference. To first of all explain there's so-called, quote, straight news, in which we try to present the facts and bear witness to facts and direct quotes. Then there's analysis, which tries to connect the dots. As somebody once said, you can know all the facts and still not know the truth. So there's straight news reporting, there's analysis, which seeks to take the gathered straight news and make a pattern out of it, connect the various parts of it. Then there's commentary. Commentary is just, well, okay, this is what appears to be the situation. Let me tell you what I think about it. It's commentary. It doesn't necessarily urge a course of action. And then there's the editorial, in which it suggests, if it not indeed strongly suggests, a course of action. So you start by explaining that those are the four general headings under which journalists operate. I would think that a major newspaper, and let me not single out the Times, rather than center on, listen, we're very concerned about the perception, just the perception of objectivity, to explain to their readers what it is they're trying to do and allow their expert staff of journalists to do straight news reporting, do analysis, do commentary, and yes, from time to time, do editorial and present a point of view that suggests a course of action. It seems to me that would be the better way to go, but I do want to emphasize that the New York Times doesn't need any advice from me.
Dan, for a long period of time, there was network news that, while they were often accused of bias by conservatives, I think we would all argue tried to play it down the middle. The advent of cable news seems to have led to more partisan news channels. I mean, Fox News, I would argue, is borderline a propaganda network now. When you look back at the rise of cable news, do you think it was a net benefit for the news gathering business and news consuming public when you look at it, what it has become?
Well, let the record show on radio I'm smiling.
Recorded.
Duly noted.
This is a muscular question. I think the answer directly is, overall, in the main, it's a net plus. However, it certainly has had its negative aspects, some of which that you've mentioned, that at least one of the channels, and you could argue at least two, are outright propaganda networks. And I do agree that Fox News, and I've gotten in trouble from saying this before, but I say it again, particularly in their primetime news area, it's pretty hard to come to any conclusion other than they are a basic propaganda operation for a partisan political point of view. But back to the core question about cable news, that it is true that back in the day where you had the so-called big three networks, there was a concentrated effort. It was a matter of policy, and more than policy, it was what was in the heart and journalistic soul of the people who worked at ABC News, NBC, and CBS, to be what I described before as witnesses and honest brokers of information, and to drain out, insofar it was possible, any commentary or editorial. Remember the four areas I talked before, to deal in straight news and analysis. Now, cable television, along with the elimination of limitations on radio, one doesn't want to underestimate that talk radio, once the FCC changed the rules where you were not required under FCC regulations to present very differing points of view in news and public information. Once those rules by the boards, radio, talk radio, led the way and sort of showed cable what was possible for cable television. So you had a combination of talk radio, the Rush Limbaughs of the world, and what cable news became, with Fox News leading the way there, has no question has had an overall negative effect. But I come back, if you say to me, well, is the news consumer better served now in the second decade of the 21st century than he or she was in, say, 1970 or 1980? I'd take a deep breath and say I think overall probably yes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dan Rather, for joining us. The book is What Unites Us. Everyone go buy it. And this was Dan Rather, former CBS Evening News anchor.
Thank you very much for your time and interest today. Courage.
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan, so much. We appreciate it.
But listen, I really appreciate you having me on, and I know of your work, and I wish you good luck and Godspeed.
Thank you, sir.
We wish you the same. Take care.
Thanks a lot.
All right, that's our show for today. Thanks to Dan Rather and DeRay McKesson for joining us. And, we'll talk to you guys on Thursday.
Keep your heads on a swivel. There are Keurigs falling from the sky. Watch your feet. Keep your wits about you. There are new signs going up around highways that say "Watch for falling Keurigs."
Donate to Doug Jones.
Watch for falling impotent attempts at seeming like a person who cares about things.
MAGA.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.